Group B, and we received over 3,000 responses. So that's really incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, a very, very nice response from our community. So we're by the end of tomorrow, we'll have all of the data plugged into our spreadsheets, and then I will meet with our special education director, our transportation director, and our student services director, because with a district our size, we have to do a good job of making sure that the same number of students rides the buses on a daily basis, because part of our responsibility is to get the kids to school safely. So if I had all of our transportation students request Monday, Tuesday, I could not permit that to happen because we have to allow for social distancing on the bus as well. So that means some families will have to be on Thursday, Friday, even though it's their preference to be on Monday, Tuesday. At the same time, there are students that have special education services that are what we call RSP services. So these are students that for almost the entire day, they're in regular education, English, math, science, history, and other subjects. And then maybe 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, they're receiving special ed services. Um, and so what we're really close to coming to an agreement on right now with our bargaining groups is of actually being able to allow those children to come to school for up to 3 days a week instead of 2 days a week. So the way that that would work is students would be in Group A, meaning they would have Monday, Tuesday classes, and on Wednesday they would be home. All students are home for home learning. And then on Thursday, they would come back to school for an additional 4, 5, or 6 hours, whatever's written into their IEP. So that will accomplish two things. One is it will make sure that those students are not being pulled out of their English, math, science, or history class when we know that instead of getting 5 days of instruction, they're now only getting 2 days of instruction. So we really don't want to pull them out of one of those classes. And then what it also does is it allows the child to get help on those home learning days. So that's one of the ways for us to make sure that those children are not falling further behind, if that makes sense. And so in order to make that work, we have to balance out where our students with special needs who are in the RSP program, what days they're assigned. Because almost all of our RSP teachers have between 22 and 28 kids that they teach. So what we want to do is we want to basically give them 7 students or less a day, so that when the child goes to see their teacher on that extra day of instruction, they're in there with only 5 or 6 or 7 other kids, and they're getting a lot of help from their teacher and the aide who's in that classroom. So we're really looking at it as a way for us to potentially greatly improve services to those children. And in order to be able to do so, we have to balance what group those students are in. So there's a lot of data analysis that's going to happen tomorrow and Thursday and Friday. And our goal is by July 15th to be able to tell parents what group their child is being assigned to, whether it's Group A on Monday and Tuesday or Group B on Thursday and Friday. So I wanted to give that update to the board and allow you to ask any questions you might have about how the process will work for parents to understand and for students to know which of the groups they'll participate in.
How are we going to do, let's just say a parent doesn't want their child, they want to pull their child out. They're just, are you doing inter-district transfers during this time? How are we going to address those concerns?
Absolutely. We have Leticia Garcia and Kip Ward, they're handling all of our inter-district transfers.
Okay.
There isn't a ton of activity right now. Board member Martinez, it tends to be some days not any, other days a handful, two or three might come in.
Okay.
And what we're seeing is that by giving options like the Hollister Rise Academy, that's really meeting a lot of family needs. We're up to 165 students signed up for the Hollister Rise Academy district wide.
Is that going to have a cap to it?
No, because the numbers that we see coming in are very even. Um, TK through second grade, it's about 40 kids. Third through fifth grade, it's about 50 kids. And then sixth through eighth grade, it's about 55, 60 kids. So it's really kind of spreading out really evenly. So that will make it easy for us to assign teachers to the program, and we won't have to put a cap on the number. Um,
How is the teachers that are going to, do they volunteer for this? Have you got input, or did you talk about that at the I don't know.
We did talk about it at the bargaining table, so I'm limited in what I can share. What I will say is that we agreed to the idea of allowing our employees who are medically fragile to be considered first among any of their peers that might want to teach in the Hollister Rise Academy, and that's simply just to take care of their health.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my main.
That's a good question, Steve.
And follow up with that, do you have how many teachers do you have interested?
We have quite a bit. I think when we did our initial survey to teachers, we had more than 40 indicate that they would be interested. So we knew that we wouldn't have the number of positions for the number of employees who would be interested to do that. And right now, it looks like we'll end up having about 6 positions, but that could grow obviously if what we appear to be having in San Benito County, this spike of 10 to 25 cases a day, if that were to grow and change, then we might have more families say, I don't want my child going to school at all.
Yeah.
But that's again,
Yeah.
we're not going to know that until after.
Diego, is the RISE program specifically designed so a child can participate without parent or without too much parent intervention during the day?
Yes, that's the way it's designed. The way we're putting it together, President Bernowski, is we're designing the program so that at any given time during the day, we have between 10 and 15 students doing their work in the Edgenuity software or doing their work on Eureka Math and Benchmark Advanced for our primary kids. And so what that allows the teacher to do is instead of trying to teach 35 kids, we've compressed the number of students that are on the system at any one given time. So families will be given the option to sign up for the 8 in the morning to 11 in the morning time frame, the 11 until 2 p.m. time frame, and the 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. time frame. So our RISE teachers will give support to the students during those 3, if you want to call them, windows. And it's designed so that the parent does not need to sit with the child to monitor their work happening. At the same time, we do expect our RISE students to be receiving monitoring from their parents overall to make sure that the child is logging in and to make sure that the child is progressing in their work. And then it's our teacher's responsibility to provide support along the way.
Okay, because I was expecting a much larger number, and I just wonder if we're not promoting it enough because I think it's huge. I think the planning for all of this that has gone into it. I would just I was thinking more like 1,000 students would be enrolled.
I'm thinking it's going to land somewhere closer to about 400 kids. And I think like anything else, President Bernowski, when people jump into it and start to have success, I think they'll share their experiences with their neighbors and family members. And I think if it's a strong program and our teachers are trained and our students are succeeding, I think that tends to lead to more kids wanting to participate.
Because like you had initially said, it wasn't, the RISE program really isn't for all students.
Right.
You really need a lot of self-motivation and focus. You know, the child needs to be very mature to really be successful in that type of program.
That's right. That's right. And we did get questions about children with IEPs being in the RISE program, and we did let parents know via our FAQs and via our town hall events that we held that we will have an RSP teacher assigned to support children who are in the RISE Academy. But again, the child has to be able to log in and do their work because they won't have an adult sitting there with them, instructing them to do that. So that's a pretty big component of it. In tonight's board agenda, you also have a document that shows some visuals pertaining to how we'll react and respond in the event that we have a suspected coronavirus case in a classroom, or in the event that we have an actual coronavirus case in a classroom. So I wanted to call the board's attention to that document. There are some very common symptoms for coronavirus that we want to educate the public about.
That's good.
Of course, the first is the 100.4 fever. The way we look at it is you have to have the 100.4 fever. That's the first and most important symptom. And then from there, if you also have a cough, a headache, a runny nose, diarrhea, vomiting, or a sore throat, then those are symptoms of coronavirus. So in the first visual that's provided here, we have 3 different scenarios. So we have if a student has a 100.4 temperature, or if the student exhibits those coronavirus symptoms, the ones that were on the page right before, or if the student answers yes to a health screening question. And the health screening question is it's published by the CDC, and it asks questions about illness, and it asks questions about out of county travel, out of state, out of country travel. And then what would happen is that particular student would be sent home, and our district or the parent would contact local public health officials, the hospital or the public health department, to enact some healthcare testing so that we can verify whether or not the child indeed has COVID-19. But what's important there is that the classmates would remain in school. So I wanted to kind of open there, give the board an opportunity to ask any questions specifically on that visual, why the classmates would stay in school and only that student would go home.
Makes sense that you, at this point, since we don't have a confirmation whether the student is positive or not, but are we staying as a district? We are requiring that you take your child to a healthcare provider to get tested.
Yes.
Because I want us to be very, very clear on that, objective and with, putting this out there that we will be expecting them to, pick up the child and take them, immediately to go get checked,
Yep.
Or within a day or so, respectively, because we need to know. But I don't know, how long it takes for the result to come back.
But is that the child that has the symptoms, not all the children, right?
No,
Right.
just the
Okay.
child with the symptoms.
Right.
I
in
have a
Hollister,
question.
few days.
Is this test going to be paid for by the parents it will be free? I mean, if you're going to say, go get them tests, what if they don't have the money to get them tests? Hello?
Yeah, good question.
Oh.
Steve, all I can tell you is I went and had a test on Monday, and I was not charged a thing. That
Well,
was
I
at
had
the,
to test too. I
conference.
wasn't either, but I don't know. I wasn't charged, I thought, because I was 68. That's why I thought I wasn't charged. I
I
don't
took
know
a
what
test
the
too,
rules are.
Steve, and I took it 2 weeks
Yes,
ago
it's
and I
Ms.
wasn't
Garcia.
charged.
Okay, well, because that might be a hindrance for, we want them getting tested as soon as possible. And
It's
if they
free at
don't
the
have the
vets.
money, it'd be a drawback if it costs money.
Yeah, and I did not provide any insurance information, nor did they ask for any. So, anyway, now, also, it's been 8 days and I still haven't gotten any results. In fact, while we're here, I went online and checked, and it still says they're processing. So,
Took me 7 days to get mine back, and that was back on May 7th.
wow.
Same here, Steve. It took them actually 8 days
Yeah.
to tell me.
And folks, we do have a call from the public, so I'm going to take that call.
Got your timer going, Jan?
Yeah.
Hi there, you're on the phone with the school board. Yes.
Yeah, we cannot hear the caller.
At all.
I will, for the board, I'm gonna go ahead and share the comments with the board. I do have the volume turned all the way up. Is this Mrs. De La Puerta? Would you just speak up loudly so that the board can hear you?
Diego, there's nothing.
Nothing. I hear nothing.
Okay, okay. And I will share that with the board. So board members, the phone call from our community member states that one of the reasons that the RISE numbers may be low is that parents may not realize that there's a deadline to submit the applications. And so as a result of that, they may not see the urgency in submitting the application
That
now.
makes sense.
And that might be a reason. What I will say is that we don't want to rush families into making the decision. So what we have, because we fielded hundreds of phone calls and emails about the RISE Academy, we really encourage them to read the PowerPoint that we sent out to all families via email, and to call us with any other questions. And we are seeing about 15 to 20 applications a day. So if that were to happen until the beginning of school, like I said, it would get us pretty close to 400 kids between now and then. And thank you, Ms. De La Puerta. Did you have something else? Yes. Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna disconnect the call, Ms. De La Puerta, and I'll respond right now online. I'll share your comment with the board as well. Thank you. So board member, the phone call that came in from the public had a second piece to it, which was discussing for this particular parent the fact that they have a child who attends Hollister Dual Language Academy and is going on the RISE Academy for medical reasons, not necessarily for reasons having to do with choosing to be in an online program. Um, and so what the parent is saying is that for a first grader, there's a concern about there not being enough support regarding the daily assignments, the daily instruction. And she's aware that there's a 3-hour window, but the information says that there's 5 hours of work. So, I'm glad she asked that question, because for our first graders and our kindergarten students, there's a limit on how much time we want those children on a computer every day. And 3 hours is that limit. So we will need those students to do written work for an extra couple of hours on a daily basis, because in order for them to meet their academic milestones, they have to put in practice. All of the content, all of the written work, all of the work packets will be provided to every family. So no family is going to have to come up with any of the materials themselves. And the teacher who's assigned to work with those lower grade students will be able to provide the parents with tips and ideas and suggestions on how to help their child when they're outside of that 3-hour window. So for our district, we looked at it as an opportunity to open up the online education for kids as young as TK. But as we've said from the very beginning, it will require parental support in order for it to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Because I know on Facebook, I know one of the questions parents were having especially from the HDLA, was the fact that, because of health concerns, they pull their child out, but then we go back to normal, everything would, because they would put them in the RISE, would they still have the capacity to go back into a regular HDLA classroom?
Yes, they would.
Okay.
Yeah.
So their spot would not be, they would not give up their spot if they decided to transition to a RISE program.
That's right. And what we've told parents, Board Member Martinez, we've explained that the difference between a return to the school and a return to a particular classroom is where it would change. So we might have a classroom that has 26 kids in it, and the parent might say, my older siblings had Mr. Ochoa for 4th grade, so I want my child who's been in the RISE program to go back into Mr. Ochoa's class. But I might have a coworker who has 19 kids in their class. So as the principal, I'm not going to put a class at 27 when the class next door has 19. It's not fair to the other 26 kids, and it's not a good idea educationally to have imbalanced classes. So what we tell parents is that you will absolutely be able to return to the school, but you won't necessarily be able to select the classroom. And parents understand when we explain it to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
What I want to take the board through is the example of what happens if a family member of a student actually tests positive for coronavirus. Once the school is made aware of that situation, the student would be sent home for 14 days to quarantine. And again, the district or the parent would contact the healthcare official or the hospital to arrange for testing for the child. And then the same procedures to re-enter campus would be in place. In other words, a negative test, and if the child has any symptoms, the symptoms have to improve, not necessarily resolve, but the symptoms have to have improved in addition to having the negative coronavirus test.
How would the family communicate with us that a family member had it?
They would pick up
That's
the
something
phone.
we're
Yeah.
told they have to call immediately, or?
Yep.
Okay.
We would want them to pick up the phone and call the school. I think when a family does find out that somebody has coronavirus, I think they're always a little bit worried about their privacy, because that's not
that's
something
what I'm
you
worried
want necessarily to share with very many people. But at the same time, we would then prepare a letter that we would send to the students, family, and staff at that school to let them know that there is a coronavirus, a child at home because a family member has coronavirus.
I'm curious if that child is in the home where somebody tested positive, but is not exhibiting symptoms.
Yeah.
And in those 14 days, do we have a backup plan for that child to continue education from home? They can't come to school? Because I worry about that, as well as the kids if you potentially put them on quarantine, or the staff.
Yeah, so the nice thing about the hybrid model is that we already have a system for putting the assignments and putting the work into Google Classroom so that the student really is able to just transition into being doing their work remotely, basically. They won't be able to physically be in class to get the lessons, but they will get their work assigned. The only thing I would say we want to balance is we don't really want to require the work because the child might be sick, so we might have a child whose dad has coronavirus, and on the first or second day the child is feeling okay, but by the third day the child is sick. So we want to give them the work, but we don't want to necessarily require it, because again, the child could get sick a couple of days in, and with coronavirus, it could be an extended illness. It could be 5, 6, 7, 8 days. So we want to balance that for the children.
Have you heard about how ADA would be handled in situations like that?
Yes, the requirements for daily attendance. So I'm glad you asked that, Board Member Kane, because one of the, I guess, compromises in the governor's budget that was adopted and is now in effect was a flexibility for school districts to remain online, to come back in a hybrid model, or to come back with all students. What they're requiring us to do now is they're requiring us to show proof that the work we're assigning kids is equal to the number of hours that it would be if the child were in school. So when we assign work to children, we have to prove that the work we gave children was enough work to be about the same as if the children were in school. And if the child doesn't do their work on any given day, we have to mark the student absent. So that means if a child is at home on a Thursday and a child has 3 assignments that they're supposed to do, English, math, history assignment, and the child doesn't do those assignments, then that means the child is absent from school on Thursday.
So it'll kind of work like the old, somebody goes for 2 weeks and you give them a homework packet, and this is what they're supposed to do. If they bring it back and did it, then they get credit for the ADA. If they didn't, they get no credit.
The difference is, Steve, we have to do it every single day. In the example you're giving, you evaluate it once at the end of 2 weeks.
Right.
In the example that the state has created, we have to monitor it every single day.
Wow. Wow.
Exactly. Wow is exactly right. So
That's something important for the parents to know. I didn't realize.
It sure is.
It's just really coming out right now, Board Member Torres de Luna, because when the budget was adopted, we all knew that there would be what's called an omnibus trailer bill, Senate Bill 98 it's called. And it's, like any piece of legislation, it's really lengthy. So it's taken the California School Boards Association and the Association of California School Administrators time to go in and analyze the bill. And so now it's been about 10 days, and now we're realizing how much work is going to go into monitoring basically the non-school days.
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
And this year, our budget is based on our attendance for last year. There's no guarantee what next year's budget will be based on. If it's based on attendance and our kids are not doing their homework when they're at home on these days, then it could be a pretty big problem for us.
Okay,
Hmm.
I get it.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what happens if a student tests positive for coronavirus. Here we go. The student who tested positive, the other students in that cohort, and that means the other 12 or 13 or 14 kids who are in that class on either group A or group B, and the teacher would be sent home for 14 days quarantine. Questions on that protocol?
I don't think so.
How do the
Diego,
how do the absences count? I mean, so Joey is in Freddie's class, and Freddie got sick. So Joey's out for 14 days, but Joey never got sick. So how does that count on the ADA?
Well, what we have to do is we have to give all those 14 kids homework for 14 days. And all 14 kids are expected to turn in their homework for each of those 14 days unless the parent contacts the school and says, on Monday, my child got sick and was sick for this amount of days. And when that number of days is complete, the child is expected to go online and start completing their work and submitting it for attendance.
Diego, let me understand. Is this only if a child tests positive, or also if their family member
So
tests positive?
the
Yes.
family member would be the slide before. So in the slide before, that was where if a family member tests positive, then only that child.
Only the child. Okay.
Right. But let's in a way they kind of connect. So if dad tests positive and we send home the child and the child takes the test, and Rob, you said your test took 8 days so far to come back.
Yep.
So the child's home for 8 days, but then if the child tests positive on that 8th day, that means the other 14 kids in the class go home the day that we find out that that child tested positive, because that child was with his classmates or her classmates immediately prior to going to get tested. Does that make sense? So in a way, it kind of connects. Both of those visuals kind of connect.
You said the teacher is going to be quarantined as well.
That's correct.
What about the students that the teacher has the other 2 days at the middle school?
We'll have a substitute.
Okay, so it'd be okay. Gotcha.
Okay, so but we're still not. We didn't answer my question. So, what happens to the children that have to stay home because they were exposed to the child who was sick? What happens to their attendance record? What happens to the teacher's attendance record? How does this all work out?
Well, the children that go home are all going to be given work for those 14 days. So
I understand that. I'm talking about ADA.
Right.
How does this?
If they
So as long as they do work, they won't be considered absent.
Exactly. But the work has to be equivalent to the amount of
time in school.
To a full,
basically. Yeah.
A full time. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the teacher?
The teacher falls into one of two categories. In the first category, the teacher is healthy. In other words, they're at home because one of their students tested positive, but the teacher feels okay and is able to manage their work from home. In the second scenario, the teacher is ill. The teacher contacts the district office and says, I'm ill. I'm not going to handle my work duties. So then the district procures a substitute for the students who are like Steve said, the students who are actually in school, but also the students who are home learning.
So then a question with that same scenario, 14 days pass, and then we let everyone return. They don't have to get a test. We don't ask them, were you sick?
Well, we will give them the student health questionnaire, and that asks those questions, and we will do a temperature check upon return. So we have that baseline measure or test, if you want to call it, to ensure that the kids we're letting back on campus have not been sick and do not have a temperature when they report to school.
Are we going to do anything with the adults that are on campus before we start work with trying to, what if people are asymptomatic?
We don't have any plans for that right now, Board
Okay.
Member Grist. I think, we would need to basically hear a little bit more from the board about that, but also talk to our bargaining partners. I think we want our employees to safeguard their own health, but up until this point in time, we haven't made any decisions or even talked to either union about mandatory testing or asking for folks to be tested before they report to work.
I want to say that I think that the precaution of the 14 days is good. I think that we're taking everyone's safety into account. And just so everyone knows, I work for County of Santa Clara, and that is not protocol.
Yeah.
It's if you're sick, then you stay home. If you're not sick, you come to work, even if you've been exposed. So I think that our protocol is good because it really takes safety into account for staff and students.
Wow.
I think my only question on, being a classified employee is that, when you're new to the district or, you've been, if you've been sick or whatever, or how, if you're exposed and you're being, you have to be at home for 14 days, are we going to deduct that? What's the expectation, I guess, is my question, from the district of the employee that is being sent home for 14 days.
Yeah.
And, if I've got 12 sick days, does that wipe it out? I mean, there's still so many different questions, as far as the level of, you have the certificated and, if they're home, if they're sick, but if the expectation is still 14 days, we can, with one exposure to a food service department or, a transportation department or
Right.
maintenance department, it would shut you down
That's right.
for 2 weeks. So what does that look like then? How are we going to get things done? And so, I would rather be on the more cautious side, but, the reality is it could happen, especially, in a district size of the size that we have. But what would we do in that situation? As far as an employee, I would want to know, what does that look like?
Yeah. At present, Board Member Martinez, we're not going to require the employee to exhaust their leave if it is a COVID-related quarantine. So
Okay.
if an employee has an illness, if an employee gets the flu, we would deduct sick leave and they would call in sick.
Sure.
So we expect for that to continue. But if an employee is sent home because a student in their class is sick and they're exposed, then we're basically using what we believe to be a fair measure, which is to say it's a precautionary step that we're requiring the employee to do, so we're not going to deduct it from their sick leave.
Okay.
If the employee is sick, that's different because
Well, sure.
it doesn't really, if it were a flu, if it were a cold, if it were any other illness, we would deduct sick leave.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's how we're looking at it. If by policy the district requires an employee to go home for 14 days, then that isn't something that we're going to use to deduct sick leave from our employees.
It's good to know.
Yeah, but I'm hoping and praying that we do not have the example you gave.
I'm sorry. I just, scenarios pop in my head, and as a
I'm
board
sitting-
member, I'm thinking, okay,
You know,
I'm sitting in
Liz,
front of a
moly.
plastic table. Otherwise, I would be knocking on wood. So
that's part
whoever
of the
has a wood
problem.
table, please knock.
That's part of the problem of what we have right now. There are too many nebulous things that we can't answer.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just going to have to start the way we best can and take it, play it by ear and see what happens.
Yeah.
And board member Kane, the last part of what you said is, we can't predict what will happen. But so let's say now a child goes home because they're coronavirus positive and then tests negative at some point in time, and we have the symptoms have improved, then the child there's still one more hurdle for the child to return, which is they have to let us know that none of their family members are still positive for coronavirus. Because
So that
if
means
they
they have
are,
to get retested, right? Is that what you're saying?
yes, they have to stay
Expectation?
home and get
Okay.
retested.
Okay.
So if the coronavirus has resolved in their home and they're not exposed to a family member who's coronavirus positive, then they could return and be with their classmates in school.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit going on. I did want to share tonight's update with the board. I will share with the board, we're seeing a lot of political activity regarding school reopening plans. I think everybody's aware that the President of the United States came out today with some pretty strong language about the importance of reopening. We have the American Physicians Association putting out some documents strongly recommending reopening schools. We have advocates on both sides of the aisle, both Democrat and Republican advocates strongly supporting the idea of reopening schools. And at the same time, we're seeing our coronavirus cases increase in the state of California and nationwide. So like everything else in 2020, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But we are doing a great job of planning for every eventuality, having a plan in place for any circumstance that we would approach. So I wanted to give tonight's presentation to the board and let you know that on July 28th at our regular board meeting, you'll have another update regarding our school reopening plan.
Okay.
All right, that's my presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that
Thank you.
takes us to 11B, which is update on 2021 Hollister Prep School reopening plans. So I want to give a couple of summary explanations about their plan. The Hollister Prep School plan was shared with their board a week and a half ago and approved by their board. And it's different than our plan. Their plan calls for school on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with no school on Friday. Their plan calls for a 3-hour school day for the morning group and a 3-hour school day for the afternoon group, and then a little bit over an hour in between to be able to sanitize the campus. Their plan calls for no breakfast or lunch at school. And their plan calls for no use of the facilities, recess facilities. So their plan is looking at instruction for 90 minutes and then basically a 10-minute outdoor break with another 90-minute instructional piece attached to it. So as far as accessing the site and spending time on campus with the Hollister Prep School, I think there's going to be some steps that are being taken that are going to really limit the interaction between classes of kids and among kids. And the majority of the Hollister Prep School activity that would happen at the R.O. Hardin campus would be in those 8 classrooms that they continue to use, and in that restroom that is located at the end of that wing of classrooms. And so I wanted to open it up for the board for any questions that you have on their plan, and try to answer any of those questions for the board.
I had a question. I looked at the plan, their plan is fine. How is it, how are opening and closing schools coordinated? So we don't have all the kids leaving at the same time or coming at the same time. Are we doing that? How are we doing that?
It is. I met with Kevin Sved, their chief executive officer, last week, and what we agreed to was that there would be a 25-minute window in between the opening and closing of schools for both schools. So that we feel that is a sufficient amount of time to be able to have little to no contact between parent groups for R.O. Hardin and for Hollister Prep School.
Yeah, that was my main concern.
Yeah, he in the document there's a sample, but that sample isn't set in stone.
Yeah, because the sample that he gives, there's only 15 minutes in between the opening of R.O. Hardin and the opening of their school. How about, do they have their own janitor, or is our janitor supposed to clean their classroom?
They have a daytime person, and so they're covered in that sense. But I think they also have a pretty strong plan for involving other employees at the school to be able to help with sanitizing in between the two groups.
So our janitors will not be used?
They will be, but only to the extent that they were last year. So we have a janitor who works in the afternoons, and that janitor will continue to work in the afternoon at HPS.
But not during this lunchtime thing?
Nope.
Okay. I had sent an email to Diego earlier today because their document doesn't discuss temperature checks or hand washing or specificity about spatial, the social distancing. So we don't know about that. Their document doesn't discuss volunteers on the campus, who's coming on, who's going to be there. Their program relies on volunteerism. I personally thought it felt like a draft. It did not, to me, feel like a document that was in place. And I was not particularly pleased with it. And I think that we should get more of a finalized with specific times. And how are they going to be doing their temperature checks? And if my big thing is the drop off and the pickup. And because I'm concerned that this, to me, I think is going to be a bottleneck for all of our schools. And the temperature checks, how are we going to streamline this? And how is this going to happen? And having 2 schools that are, of different entities, how is this going to work? And so they haven't even addressed that issue in their plan. Unless I missed it, I didn't see it.
I want to add to Jan's one more was there any talk, Diego, when you spoke to the principal there about, will he be communicating if they do have anyone test positive, just so that, because it is close proximity,
Right.
just so that you guys are in communication about, or the principal, right, at R.O. Hardin with the other
Lilia,
principal?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't see any coordination that way, or even a discussion with our, the 2 site principals. I just looked at this as a draft. I did not look at this as a final product. And I think it's good that they have a different day off than what we have. I like that idea. But I just think it needs to be more fine-tuned. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I did not think it was a complete document.
And what I will do, Board Member Grist, is I'm going to ask Hollister Prep School to sit with me and develop an updated document for the board to review at our July 28th meeting.
I guess we're spoiled, but we, I was expecting something like what we have. And maybe we're spoiled, I don't know.
But how much oversight, how far does our oversight, reach, Diego?
Right.
I mean, we can't control much things on their campus. I mean, that's what their purpose is, right? To be independent of us. We have financial oversight, but how far does that reach in?
But my problem is, if they're going to come after us, then that's different. See, I was looking at that 8:15 time, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how are they going to be doing their temperature checks when I'm sure we haven't finished our temperature checks? Yeah. See, I was looking, they had a start time of 8:15, and R.O. Hardin starts at 8 o'clock. So that's where my thinking was coming from, is that we're not coordinating here.
We never have.
Well,
Jan,
we've never had to do temperature checks.
Since they've been there and they started, they've never really asked, for input from us. They've like Rob says, they've pretty been from the beginning pretty independent. They don't need our approval for a whole hell of a lot.
Well, this is a pandemic, so
I understand, Jan, but by law, we don't have that much legally authority. Correct, Rob. Correct. Within their structure of how they're going to conduct their school and their business on a regular basis, whether we're in a pandemic or not, how they're going to proceed is basically how they're going to proceed. They do have a board that they, have to, talk this, share this
right,
with.
But if they're not following state guidelines, if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're on our property, that's a problem.
Right. I mean, that is just something we need to ensure that they're following, but, and if they're not, then call them on it. But, that's, I don't know that we really could do much more than that.
I think that gets back to my original point. And one of the things I saw in there is they're making an effort not to intermingle the kids, like recesses and things, or only using. To me, the key is controlling any interaction between starting school and ending school. The rest of the time, it seems to me like you can keep pretty much separate. But I'm concerned, if you said 25 minutes, Diego, I agree with Jan. If it's only 15 minutes, I'm not so sure that's enough time. To me, that's the only thing that really needs to be coordinated. When you're coming, when they are coming, when they are leaving, and to make sure that it doesn't overlap with anything that R.O. Hardin is doing.
Right.
I think if we come from it from a perspective of, look, we're a community, we're neighbors, right? If how do we coordinate better to make sure that your kids don't get sick and these kids don't get sick, and how do we inform each other if there is a positive?
Liz, forgive me if I missed this, but is the high school testing every student every morning?
That was the indication that I got that from the focus groups that I'm a part of. The idea was to have temperature checks for every group that comes in every day.
Not testing, right? Temperatures checked.
Just the temperature, yeah. Just the temperature screening.
You can test. Yeah.
No. Just the temperature.
And Diego, are we taking the temperature every single day?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're doing
I mean,
active
the
screening.
reason I ask is I had heard, and I can't remember from what individual, but like the high school with their conditioning, in the athletics that they piloted this summer, that the temperature checks were just taking way, way too long. And having been out of town this week and going out a lot, I can just tell you, it takes a long time. We're with a group of 12 people, and taking 12 people's temperature takes a long time to walk into a dining room. But anyway,
You know,
um,
my 3-year-old started over at Little Baylor Preschool this week, and it's a breeze. They've been doing childcare for the last couple of months, and it takes about 10 seconds to get my daughter's temperature checked. I think it's the kind of thing that
Are they doing it with the gun?
they're doing it with the handheld temperature.
Yeah, I do that when I go to the gym. It takes no time at all. It's boom, and then they just look.
I
It doesn't
just
even
think,
take 10 seconds.
yeah, they have a person who that's what the person does. They check
Yeah.
temperature. So the kid walks up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, welcome to school, sweetheart, and head right in.
It wouldn't take any longer than handing them something. That's how short a time it takes. It's
It's
just
that short. Yeah, it's
yeah,
really
it's
fast. And
real
and I,
fast.
I do want to assure the board that our temperature readers are high quality, and we expect them to give us really accurate, really fast responses when that happens. The other thing about it is that I think for each school, we're looking at ways to do temperature checks that don't require long lines of kids. If you can sort of imagine, Arl Hardin has the drive up and drop off. So we're looking at a couple of different things that we can do. One is actually checking temperatures when children are in the vehicle with their parents, and that would greatly speed up the temperature checking. Another is to allow one or more entrances at each of our school to be able to line kids up as we're taking their temperature.
All right.
So if you think about a school like Rancho San Justo, the
Mhm.
gym entrance is on, it opens to the street. It
Yeah.
opens to that open area. So we wouldn't need kids to line up outside of Rancho San Justo. We could use the gym to be able to take temperatures. So that would fit basically 100 kids if we needed to socially distance them to have their temperatures checked there. So we could have 5 employees inside the gymnasium at Rancho San Justo checking the temperatures. So at that school, there wouldn't be any line outside. And then the same would basically work for Mays Middle School because their gym operates in the same way. You can walk right up to that gymnasium. So we're looking at each school and trying to find those examples of how to get these kids tested and get them on campus.
All right.
And then I think with a 25-minute window in between the two school start times, one of the things that we are going to ask families is to refrain from showing up too early. So that would mean for the Hollister Prep School families to, if their school start time is 8:25, I know that's going to elicit a lot of laughs. I can hear it already.
Yeah.
But actually, it would be any group of parents, not necessarily Hollister Preps, any, because we do have, for a lot of families, we perform the function of caring for the
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
But there
And
are a lot of
we'll,
families who, if we ask them to show up 5 minutes before school starts, they would do that as well.
so I know Carla had asked about the before and after school programs. Are those part of the scenario still, or are those completely just for now
Those are,
not going
yeah,
to function as
those are,
normal?
yeah. We were able to confirm that the funding for our after-school programs are continuing. So our Hollister Youth Alliance, our YMCA programs, our CASA programs, those programs are going to continue. We'll have to do the same process of the cleaning requirements, of the social distancing requirements, wearing face coverings, temperature checks, the works. We'll have to do all those things for those after school programs as well. And by reopening in a hybrid model, that means the numbers in those programs will also reduce to half. So we're working right now with our Ed Services Department and with our partners to come up with a really good plan for August. All right.
All right. So you're going to come back to you're going to meet with Navigator and then come back.
And I'll have an
Okay.
update at our July 28th meeting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. That
All
takes
right.
us, yeah.
So to 12, the discussion action items, and this is just a first reading, correct?
That's correct, and I'm glad you pointed that out. I did have a conversation with Board Member Grist, and we do have the board meeting on the 28th. So what I wanted to do is open it up for the board and us go down the line of each one of these items, starting with board policy 0470, COVID-19 mitigation. And then I have my laptop here that I'll take notes on as we move forward into our July 28th board meeting. All right. Open for any comments or questions on the COVID-19 mitigation board policy. This is a new policy. Obviously, it didn't exist until this pandemic hit, and it is lengthy. So I want to give board members an opportunity to ask any questions or make any comments about the.
I have a question. I don't know, what is blended learning?
So blended learning is a term that is used to describe the combination of in-school and at-home instruction.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
You know, I like this paragraph here. It's the one that starts, the board recognizes that student and staff have the right to a safe campus.
Yeah.
When I've had people talking to me, my main response to them is the fact that we all want the kids back to school as best that we can do it. It's not like we don't want them at school. But this paragraph, I also emphasize the fact that we have to know that it's safe for them to come back. And this paragraph does a very good job of explaining that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
All right, let's move on to board policy 1112, media relations.
Media relations.
I was good with all of that. I didn't have any questions. I thought it was fine.
All right. Any other board comments on 1112?
Not for me.
All right, let's go to.
I was good.
Yeah. Let's go to board policy 1312.1, concerns, complaints concerning district employees.
Well, this is the one that I had a problem with. When I was reading it, first I thought it was employee versus employee. And then when I turned the page, I realized, oh no, this is about anybody. Mm-hmm. So then when I went back to the first part, it really didn't explain it, in my opinion. It wasn't really well spelled out that this is a complaint against any employee, whether it be administrative, a teacher, a classified. It did not really state that. And then when we got down to, I'm still on that very first page, in number 1, it says when a written complaint is received, the employee who is the subject of the complaint shall be notified within 5 days. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of an employee, and I'm not going to be told for 5 days. I wasn't happy. And then I put myself as a parent, and if my child had been done wrong by a teacher or whomever, and I have to wait 5 days, I wasn't a happy camper either. So I thought 5 days was too long, and it wasn't specified if it was business days or, so I was unhappy with that. And then when I went to 1312.3, when it's mediation between student and student, it allows notification within 3 business days. So maybe our timelines should be the same. I don't know what the board feels about that, but I thought 5 days was too long for, if you put your shoes in both, I thought it was too long.
I agree with that, Jan. I think you're right. 3 days would make more sense.
And according to that 5 days, Jan,
Yes.
maybe Diego can answer. What's happening in this 5 days? Why should it take 5 days? It says when a written complaint is received, okay, let's say it's on a Monday, the employee who is subject to the complaint shall be notified within 5 days. Why does it have to be any days, maybe 2 days? Or are you going to investigate first before you tell them? Or are you going to tell them first and then investigate? How's that going to work?
You would almost never investigate before telling an employee. There would be very, very few examples where you would start the investigation without first notifying the employee of the complaint. I think the 5-day time frame is really gives the district a cushion of time to be able to sit down with the employee, because as you know, many of our employees have a very limited time during the day when they're really available to sit with an administrator. If you just think about a teacher who has 25 kids during the day, and a complaint would come in, let's say the complaint comes in on a Monday at 4 o'clock, then you want to be understanding of that teacher, and you want to schedule a time to be able to tell them about a complaint, because sometimes these complaints can be very concerning to the employee. Like an employee might feel that the complaint is way off base, or is not true, and the employee might react in a very upset, panicked, scared manner. So as a boss, you wanna sit with the employee and say, hey, can we meet after school on Wednesday? And the employee might say, well, I have a doctor's appointment today at 1 o'clock, so I'm leaving early, and Wednesday I pick up my daughter at her school, and I don't have time after school, so could we meet on Thursday? So it's more of that kind of a reason. And so I don't think it's because the district wants to delay telling the employee. I think it's more wanting to find the right time to share the complaint with the employee, because I can guarantee you, any employee who has a written complaint filed against them, it is a horrible experience for that employee.
Mm-hmm.
Do we publicly put who our complaint officer who will be conducting the investigation will be?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, Board Member Martinez. Depending on the type of complaint, there are different officers. So we have a Title IX complaint officer, we have a district complaint officer, so it just really depends on what the offense is or what the accusation is. And we would absolutely add that to our district webpage and to our annual notification to parents, what they call the ANTPs.
Yeah, it's important to know who that person will be.
Changing it to 3 days is definitely possible. I just wanted to give an example of a situation where it would make more sense to tell the person on a Thursday about a complaint that came in on a Monday.
Well, if it's a student teacher complaint, I guarantee you that parent has already told people already. You know, and it just seems to me that lets it fester within the school. And I don't think that's healthy. And the teacher really doesn't know what's going on. They're hearing hearsay.
Yeah, I'd want to poll the principals on this, because being married to one, and you know, all bosses get complaints, you know, and especially for the reasons Diego highlighted, you know, you just can't stop in the middle of the day. Well, I'm going to walk down to the teacher in the middle of the classroom and say, by the way, we have a complaint against you. I mean, these things they take a long time. They have to be scheduled, and again, I don't think 5 days is that unreasonable, but I want the principals to weigh in, because they're going to be the number one receiver.
But it wouldn't be the principals actually being the complaint officer that would handle the complaint. So, you know, you'd have to know, you know, depending on which type of complaint, like Diego was saying, we have to clarify that. So if I'm, you know, as a parent, or, you know, I needed to know, okay, well, which form do I fill out? Which, you know, process do I go through, and who's the contact person who I would go through to file my complaint, you know, or follow up with to make sure they got it or whatever. So we have to kind of define what that looks like so that it's very clear whether, you know, whether it's, you know, somebody outside, you know, but it could be against any employee, because it wouldn't necessarily, again, going back, you know, it won't be the principals actually doing the investigation. It would be this assigned investigator handling it. And like you said, I don't know that they could just drop whatever it is they're doing, you know, which in certain cases, depending on how severe the accusation is, they may have to, but I think that cushion of 3 to 5 days gives you enough time to kind of get your ducks in a row and get planning on how you're gonna address the situation.
Yeah, so, and just to piggyback on what Board Member Martinez and Grist both said, I think almost always there's a way for a teacher to know that it's not going well with a particular parent or student. And what the policy says is that every effort should be made to resolve complaints regarding district employees at the earliest possible stage. But there are instances every year that completely shock the employee, and sometimes even the supervisor, where it's seems, wow, just completely shocking that this complaint came in about this employee. And these are people that we rely on and that we value, and I just want to say, I think 3 days is doable. I think 5 days is also doable, so I'll leave it up to the board to make that decision. What I'll do in this policy is I'll write it both ways, and then at our July 28th meeting, I'll give the board the option at that meeting to specify which of the two we'll go with. And
it has to be business days, right? You're going to put business days?
Absolutely. I'll add business days, but we'll add it on there so that it gives you a little bit of time to think about it more. And then when we get back together on the 28th, we can decide on which of the two makes the most sense.
Yeah, because you have an additional, you know, you have the complaints shall be notified within 5 days or in accordance with collective bargaining agreement. So I'm not sure if the teachers union has any collective, you know, in their contract as far as a complaint is concerned, when they would be notified, or CSEA has that in their contract. But I think, you know, the window of time I like, so we can't put 3 to 5 days, business days?
Well, I think,
or do you want to just keep it to one number?
I think I think we should keep it to one number, because I think that makes it clear to the complaint officer what the requirement is.
Okay.
My
And
main concern,
what I'll do is I'll do what President Bernowski suggested, and get word out to our principals, and I'll share their feedback with the board on the 20th.
Well,
Okay.
the only reason I came up with 3 days, I just want to reiterate, is because in 1312.3, where it says student to student, it says 3 business days. So I was just trying to keep the timelines the same. So if we have it in one policy, it's 3 business days for a complaint. And then if we do it here, I was just trying to make that our timelines are equal, and maybe they don't have to be. My big thing is business days, because if a complaint comes in, the Friday before a Christmas holiday, okay, so we can't count the holiday days. It has to be business days. So my big thing is business days. But I was just suggesting, one, I thought the 5 was too long, though, because I had my parent hat on and I had my employee hat on. And I would want to know earlier. That's it.
Diego, do we need to specify that if an appeal is made to the board, that the board shall consider the matter in closed session? Does that, but does not including that really harm the process?
It doesn't.
Because
it doesn't, because depending on the type of complaint, you may be required by law to consider it in closed session, but you may also not be.
But that's what the law will always trump any policy. But I'm just thinking, we get a lot of, have we ever gotten a complaint appealed to the board?
Yes. So I was a part of that process with Dr. McIntyre. And so there was a complaint filed. At first it was the principal, and then it shifted to the superintendent. And because the parent, after the investigation was given, the outcome of that investigation, and they proceeded to then request a hearing. And that was all confidential. It was private. So the hearing itself was conducted, and it was like a court hearing. So you had, the parent, and then you had the superintendent, and both gave, testimony, and the board questioned both, just like you would a hearing, and then concluded with the board determining what the outcome would be.
Right. So that again, thinking about certain things, as a board, to protect everyone until somebody's found guilty, using that term loosely, I want to say that, unless required otherwise by law, our hearing will be in closed session.
Yes, I would suggest that process, if there is an appeal made to the board, that be done in closed session.
I'll add that to the document.
Let me just, speaking from past experience, this came up one time. It was a teacher against a teacher at the same school. If you delay telling the one teacher that the complaint has been lodged by another teacher, that teacher that lodged the complaint, if you delay too long, and this is what happened, I'm not making this up, that teacher that made the complaint went, I made this complaint against you, and no, I don't. Why haven't anybody told me?
Well,
that's what my concern was with the 5 days.
Yeah.
Because it has happened. Yeah. And it wasn't student teacher, it was teacher at the same school.
Yeah. I could see that happening. It could be a teacher, it could be a classified against a classified in the same department.
Or a classified versus the teacher.
It expanded to an entire department at Rancho.
Yeah, exactly.
All the teachers became involved, and we're fine.
Oh, yeah. You want to nip that in the butt as soon as possible. Yeah. Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
I've got it in my notes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Diego.
All right, here we go. And now we've got 1.3 or 131.3. Jan,
You know, to save
you
to save
mentioned
some
it.
time,
3-1.
to save some time, Diego,
Yep.
I read through everything else and I have no objection with anything else that's in the board policies.
Okay. Liz, how about you?
I didn't get a chance to go through
It's
everything.
okay. It's okay. I mean, we still have the 28th. We're still gonna look at this again.
Okay.
Carla, how about yourself?
I'm
I
with
trust
Liz.
Jan.
Okay.
I'm with Liz.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I read them. Really, there aren't too many. I was concerned about that 5 day, just like Jan, because I had the experience. I remember
Yeah.
what that was like. And boy, was that a mess.
Yeah.
That was a horrible mess.
Yeah. And then Rob, how about yourself?
I'm good.
Okay, so let's agree that we'll bring these back. I have my notes from tonight's conversation. I'll make those updates and you'll see them on the 28th at our next board meeting.
Sounds good, Diego. Thanks.
Okay. All right, I'll turn it back over to President Bernowski.
Future agenda items. What's on everybody's wish list?
Well, I had, oh,
Go
I-
ahead, Jan.
mine-
Let's start with Jan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had an idea and that sometime maybe October, late September, that we set up a tour for the families here in Rancho Santana to take a tour of the construction.
We still haven't seen our tour.
I know.
I'm still waiting for ours.
I understand. And then I was thinking maybe we should invite the Gavilan
and
Hill
Jan?
parents.
And
Yes.
Jan, don't forget about the families for Gavilan Hills.
That's what I just said. And the
I
Gavilan
didn't hear
Hill
you.
parents.
Yes.
But see, you know, the Rancho Santana residents have been put up with the construction. So anyway, I just thought it might be a good PR, especially the Santana Ranch residents who have been put up with the construction and everything.
Okay,
That's my
so, all right.
That's all I have to add.
Steve?
Okay, Liz, anything?
Yes. I actually got an email from a young lady. Actually, it wasn't a young lady. I'm sorry. A young man. Just asking us to support ethnic studies and the importance of having them in our curriculum. I'm not sure if ethnic studies is something that we currently introduce to our students, and if we do, is it, in the junior high level? But I think he is a law student in UC Berkeley, so he's trying to organize, this movement so that, he thinks, I think it's important for all of us to teach all of our children the importance of ethnic studies. And the sooner we can introduce them to that, the better I believe our society would be. But again, I don't know, if that is curriculum that we currently have in the Hollister School District or not, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
Got it, Diego?
I got it.
Carla, down in my right.
I was going to ask for the ethnic studies discussion as well.
Well,
Well, actually, the potential resolution is what I was going to ask for.
Well, I looked through that very carefully, and it's really based for high school. His resolution is all based on high school.
I think I think still we should talk about
Well,
some kind of ethnic
I
studies.
started a response to him. What we do, and we can do a better job. But
Jan, I hate to cut you off, but it's not on the agenda, so we can.
okay, you're right.
We'll put it on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, because let's do it legally there.
Okay.
Tony, I mean, Carla, is that it?
I don't have my own computer.
No.
I didn't have a need for it until now. I'm going to reiterate something I said last time. At the July meeting, I want a comprehensive demonstration or explanation of exactly how our distance learning is going to work as far as accountability. What are we doing to make sure that the kids are actually doing the distance learning? How do we hold them accountable? I'd really like to know that before school starts.
Well, yeah, especially if we end up going into that model. I think accountability is definitely something that needs to be tied into.
Because I've had that question asked to me a number of times, and I still can't totally answer that.
Yeah.
Steve, does that connect to the grading at all?
Yes.
It should, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what he's focusing on, is the grading.
Okay. The only thing I want to add is it is in, they do address that a little bit in the COVID-19 policy, whatever.
Yeah, it is in there.
I did see that.
Anyway, Diego?
I did see that.
Yeah. Diego, do you got it?
I got it.
Okay. I can't argue with anything like that. I'm not going to add to it. Except to say, to tie in what Steve suggested with the budgetary concerns. Just, how much attention do we have to pay to ADA? But it's the same idea as Steve's, because if the kids we're not holding them accountable, then we're not going to get the ADA, I think. But you can explain that to us.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. If there's no other agenda items, any announcements anybody would like to make? And we can start with Steve.
None. Be safe.
And going clockwise, Carla. Elizabeth, Liz.
No.
And Jan.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Diego, do you have any announcements? Good. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:36 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say, or any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We will see you all on January 28th,
July.
unless there's another
July.
special meeting.
January?
28th, yeah.
July.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Hey,
Good night.
All right, take
Happy
care.
New Year.
Hi, Carla.
See ya.
Good night, please.